Hello, and today we're going to talk about preparing for an interview. So here's the video, and you can follow along with your own slideshow at home. In preparing for an interview, a lot of times people focus on what happens before the interview, but you need to prepare for the whole interview process, the beginning, the middle, and afterwards. So first, some of the before. The very first step is to research. Just like when you did your resume, you want to research the company and decide what are their values and research the job. What does the company want from you? Are there skills or characteristics or values that are really important for this job? You also want to research the interviewers. Who is going to be in the room interviewing you? Often, when they send you an email or call you to let you know that you have an interview, they'll tell you who will be there. If your supervisor is going to be there, the supervisor may be able to speak to the specifics of the job. But if somebody from HR is there, then that person may be able to speak more about the general attitude of the company and what you'll have to do. The next step is to anticipate the interview based on the research you did. So knowing what the job is and what the company is, what sort of questions or tasks are most likely to show up in the interview? You may want to look at your own resume and think about what they'll ask you about. If you're applying for a job in management, but your resume says that your major was accounting, they might ask you why you want to go into management after studying accounting. You can be prepared for these questions, and instead of being embarrassed or surprised, you can have a good answer prepared. Come up with as many questions that you can that may relate to the job, your own positions, and what questions you could ask them. It's not just about them asking you questions. Many interviewers will ask if you have any questions at the end of the interview. The greatest strategy that you could use is if you know somebody who's interviewed at the same place, ask your friend, what was it like when you got interviewed? This is not always the case, but sometimes just hearing from somebody else who's gone on a similar kind of interview can make it easier for you. So once you've gotten many questions together, questions about the position that you can ask them, questions they might ask you, you want to practice. After you find a list of questions, practice answering them out loud. There is a big difference between knowing something in your head and letting it come out of your mouth. Especially if English is not your first language, you'll want to practice your answers. Come up with a few phrases or some words strung together that you can use quickly and easily. For example, when I was going on job interviews, I knew they were going to ask me about my research. So I became really good at talking about my research in just a couple of sentences. You might want to go back to your Bragalog and look at a few sections from your Bragalog that you could say to somebody else. Once you have an idea of what you want to say, practice the interview. The people at career services, like Sophia, often do mock interviews. You can make an appointment to go in and do an interview with the people at career services, or you can go to the mock interviews with actual employers put on by career services. Try to take these mock interviews as seriously as you can. Dress up, knock on the door, give them a handshake and introduce yourself. It may feel cheesy, especially if you're doing it with a friend or a family member, but making them as real as possible will help you to be prepared, and when the real interview comes, you won't be as scared. Finally, on the actual day, you want to be prepared to go early. If your meeting is at 4 o'clock, you might want to schedule how long it takes to drive there and then add 15 minutes so that you can find the building and the room once you get to the place. Try not to squeeze in the interview. You'll also want to plan to speak slowly and clearly. Most people speak more quickly when they're nervous. So plan before you go in that you're going to speak more slowly than you would normally. Also, make sure that you've already prepared at least one good question you want to ask them at the end. A great question would be to ask them, "When can I expect to hear back from you on whether I got the job?" And that leads us to afterwards. If you ask them when they can be contacting you, then you'll know when you should be worried. If they don't contact you after 2 days, is that normal? Or does that mean that you didn't get the job? Will they be sending you an email? Or should you be sitting next to your phone expecting a phone call? You also want to plan something nice to do for yourself right afterwards. I often recommend that people plan to go out to lunch. Maybe research a restaurant close to where you're going to be interviewed. This can help calm you down. You could also schedule to take some time for yourself. If you took time off of work, you could ask for an extra couple of hours after your interview so that you can unwind and relax. The day after, you can send a thank you email to the interviewers, letting them know that you appreciated the time that they put in. These steps will help you be prepared for an interview, not just at the beginning, but also at the end, so that you make good use of your time and don't feel rushed. Remember, the more you prepare now, the less scared you'll be in the future.